Welcome back to the Mold Show, the podcast exploring the intersection between mold and health. Before we get started today, just a reminder, certified mold assessments will be at the MAPS Spring Conference from March 13th through 15th. MAPS is the Medical Academy for Pediatric and Special Needs. We are super excited to learn from all the attendees and create relationships and resources to better help our clients. But anyway, on this episode, our guest is the author of Silent Killers, A Journey Through the Complex Disorders of Lyme Disease, Mold Toxicity, Mercury Poisoning, and Coronavirus. As I was listening to her previous interviews and reading about her book, I couldn't help but think about the Rodney Atkins song. I'm not going to sing it, don't worry. But I couldn't help but think of the song, These Are My People. I mean, as I'm listening to her history, it sounded exactly like the conversations we have with our clients every day. We really appreciate her time and her willingness to share her story. Without further ado, today's guest is Jennifer Brower.
Welcome back to the Mold Show. I am your host, Adam Horn, and as always, my co-host Sean McGrath is joining us. I am a Florida state licensed mold remediator, and Sean is a state licensed mold assessor. And together, we bring you the Mold Show, where we talk about mold from all angles, from the remediation to testing to people's experiences with having exposures to molds. And today we're joined by a special guest, Jennifer. I'd like to introduce you, and you can kind of tell us about yourself and your story as it relates to mold.
Okay, that's great. My name's Jennifer Brower. I am a fifth generation Floridian, and so obviously I've had plenty of generational exposure to mold and did not understand all the ramifications of what mold can do to individual, family, animals. And so I I was raised in the era of you play outside, I was like, water skiing and riding horses, and I was always out and about. And I never realized that I had mold in the home that I was growing up in on water. But I realized how severe it was once I had moved out. And my mom started dealing with all sorts of asthmatic problems and having pneumonia. And then the pneumonia started into like the mini strokes and all these health things. And, and it wasn't until after my mother passed away that I started realizing the effects that mold could have on a person, much less a family. And I bought an old beach house that was built in 1937. The original.
I think I lost her on my end. Oh, there we go.
There we go.
Yeah, you're back.
So
Second.
that part of the house that was built in 1937 was built to breathe. So it had the ability for air to pass through, underneath, and above, and whatnot. And we had air conditioning and heating, all that. But it wasn't until prior owners of the property added renovations, and then so it was the space that had been created to the addition of the old house that had the mold in it.
Mm.
And I didn't know that. And my three young children lived and played. Their little playroom was in an area of that part of the house that had been added on to. And unbeknownst to me, that's where the mold was. And so I was dealing with these health complications, and people were telling me, oh, we think you have Lyme disease. And I was going to Mayo Clinic, and they were misdiagnosing me. for Lyme. So I was dealing with mold and Lyme disease. And what most people don't know about those autoimmune issues is usually they hold hands. Typically, if you have Lyme, then you have mold because your body can fight one thing. They can, it can literally help you stay above board on like one level. But typically, trying to fight two is when your autoimmune system goes, time out, can't do this, just it, and that's when it caved. But my 2 out of my 3 children had mold sensitivities. One of my sons had multiple sinus surgeries, and I couldn't figure out what was going on. So I was trying to figure out what was going on with them. At the same time, I had businesses, but I was spending more time at home because my kids were sick, and so I started spending more time there. So I started getting sick. Um, so all of the ramifications, came together. And the reason why I wrote Silent Killers was to help people who were going through health issues start evaluating and looking at, okay, what's going on with me and how do I figure it out, right? And so the reason why I even told the story about owning a home that was built in 1937 was the fact that that part of the home was the safe part. It was the newer part of the home that was sick.
Mm-hmm.
And people think, oh, I have mold because I live in an older home. Well, that's not true. And you know how they build tract houses these days. So they go pour the foundation, then they'll put up the trusses and put up the walls and the trusses. And then, it may sit in elements for who knows how long. So you don't know what all of those materials are exposed to. So you don't know what is literally on the inside of the walls or the tiles or whatever. And people are like, oh, no, this is a brand new house. There's no way we have mold. And I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to kind of look into the nooks and crannies. And I'm sure that you guys see that.
Oh, you're speaking my language, Jennifer.
Yeah.
Trust me.
And I don't know that I've ever seen an addition to an older home where we try to incorporate modern construction to the older home where we haven't found significant issues.
Yeah, I live in the 1926 bungalow, and it's obviously not built with the modern amenities and not wrapped in Tyvek and plastic, and not to say that older homes don't have their water damage exposures, because they do.
Yeah.
But the breathability of those older homes is built in. I have a crawl space. I have plaster and lath walls, and so the building definitely has the ability to release humidity and ultimately dry down on its own a little quicker. Now my home has an HVAC system, which helps, but the newer stuff, it's built to hold hold in that moisture, hold in the humidity in a lot of cases if it's not built with the proper mechanical fail safes. So yeah, for sure. I see what you're talking about all the time, not to mention the building materials and quality of build and all those pieces of the puzzle too.
For sure. Yeah, we had to go literally as I was finishing my book and it was like getting ready to go to the publisher. I was working in my office and I kept thinking, gosh, I feel like off balance, feel kind of like I have vertigo, something's not right. And I was well, this is kind of crazy. I feel like I'm dealing with mold again. And what I didn't know was on the outside of my office, my house, they had put a new electric meter up and did not seal it. And I didn't know they had put it up. They didn't even tell me. So it wasn't until I started, looking around going, oh my gosh, what is going on? And it was coming through the walls in my office. And so I went through another remediation. Now I have a dehumidifier in my attic. I sealed underneath the house. I put a dehumidifier underneath the house. And then I have, the blue lights, I've got everything in there, to keep it clean and know that I can be in a safe haven. But, you know, you, it all depends on, I can't tell you how many times I've checked into a hotel and had to check out and said, I'm sorry, I can't stay there. And, you know,
That's me on a daily basis with all the travel we do. Before I get settled, I have to do a mini inspection before I set my bags down. But if we could go take a step back real quick, Jennifer, I'm glad you brought up the Lyme and mold connection. And I like the way you put it. They go hand in hand. I've always used the expression that I heard a few years ago that they can't coexist with each other in somebody's body. How did you know you had Lyme disease and that was a problem? Here in Florida, it seems like nobody thinks they can have Lyme disease because, they don't think we have ticks down here, which isn't true first and foremost. But B, there's other ways to contract it as well, from what I understand.
Well, I unfortunately contracted it in Naples, Florida, Southwest Florida, on my 10th wedding anniversary by a spider bite. I was bitten by a spider in the middle of the night. And the next day when I woke up, I couldn't move. Like literally, I could not get out of bed. And I was training for a half marathon. I was extremely athletic. And I looked at my husband, and I was supposed to run like 7.5 miles that day to train. And I looked at him, I was like, I need you to help me get up and get to the bathroom. He's going, what? And I said, I can't move. Something's way wrong. So at the time, I went through 3 days of total 100% fear because all of a sudden something was desperately wrong with me. But then my immune system kind of started kicking in, and I was doing better, and we went home and I seemed to kind of regain, but it literally, uh, 10 years later, when I got the mold exposure, kind of was when the Lyme disease reared its ugly head, and I had to go back to that thought of, I started getting some testing done, and they were like, no, it is, and Mayo Clinic even missed it because I was at Mayo Clinic Jacksonville. Had they sent me to Mayo Clinic Rochester, I would have been diagnosed correctly, healed faster, and not gone through years of misery because they would have known what to look for. But like you said, I lived in Florida, so people were like, oh, there's no way you don't have Lyme because you live in Florida. And I'm thinking, I do travel out of the state, and it's just one of those things that unfortunately it gets missed, and people get diagnosed with MS, a host of other things. But it's scary when you hear Rocky Mountain spotted fever, Epstein-Barr, viral meningitis, like all of these things, you get all these labels, and you're like, it's so overpowering. It makes you think it puts you in such a trauma state. It's hard to even think past through all the labels. And I had 3 little kids. You know what I mean? I had 3 little kids. I was like, oh no. No. I am not going down. Somebody else is not going to be raising my kids. You know what I mean? It's like you have to build up this huge internal fight and say, this shit's not taking me down. I'm going to figure it out, and I'm going to beat it, and I'm supposed to do something with the information. I don't know how, but it's kind of like I said, Silent Killers was not easy for me to write because it not only took me out of my comfort zone in such a big way because I'm such a private person. I had to lay out there all those fears and loneliness and trepidations and all the crap that I went through, and how you have to fight for yourself. But it's interesting. It's interesting how parents will fight for their kids. You have to muster up that type of energy to fight for yourself, right? I mean, I, I think that, that's what I had to do. I had to keep fighting and say, no, I'm not crazy. No, I feel this, and really try to stand for myself and say, listen, if I'm going through this, I know there's a lot of other people going through this too. And I just did not want people to feel like they were alone.
Mm-hmm.
Well, talking about the psychological effects of mold is taboo. I don't see a lot of people talking about it at all. What
Oh
not
my,
not only what it does to you if you're searching for a problem, but what happens when you find that problem? You know, ultimately it kind of puts you in that mode of scanning. You know, you're always scanning for something, a problem, even post remediation. You know, a lot of my clients, it's hard to turn that off, even after we've been in the building
Mm-hmm.
or another remediator's been in the building, knowing that you've been in that building and that it's caused you these types of traumas. And in your case, you mentioned it, the word fear. There are a lot of
God.
people who have
Significant.
yeah, significant fear responses because they they know it's affecting them and they're worried that it could potentially take their health away. So,
Yeah.
um,
That's where, yeah, that's where you have to be super brave.
yeah.
And you have to stand up. Like, here's an example. As I said, I'm a super private person, so I wrote this book. And then here, this is just a random example because I have hundreds of the different examples, but this one I think that people can identify with. So I knew this couple and they were so excited. They'd been married for like 10 years and they were going to build their little dream home. And so they moved into their dream home and they've got kids and like I knew them. They were really a great team, right? And then all of a sudden 8, 9, 10 months later, I start hearing that there is trouble on the home front. And I thought, okay, somebody doesn't just turn batshit crazy, right? I mean, if you've been with someone for a number of years, say you've been married 10, probably dated for a few, someone doesn't then just turn crazy over a short time frame, a couple of months or whatever. And I went to them and I said, hold on, before things get worse, y'all need to have your home evaluated because when did the trouble start? And they said, after we moved in. And I said, okay, so take a step back. Everything was great. You moved into your dream home. And then what started changing? You know, and I made them retrace their footsteps. And then I talked them into getting their home tested. And sure enough, it was in a brand new shower behind the tile. And it was reaching through the bedroom into the master bedroom. And one of them was affected and one of them wasn't. And once we started identifying the problem and started getting help for that one individual, you know, I was so grateful because their marriage was saved, their family was saved. It wasn't it didn't become a she thing. It was okay, we're going to figure this out together. They just needed help to identify it, right? And then once you figure out the problem is, you can take the steps to, like you said, remediate. But just because it's been remediated doesn't mean the fear is not there. It took a lot to overcome that fear. And it's so hard. I could never sell a home that I knew was a sick house. That's just not me. But there are a lot of people who are going, we're out of here. We're just going to sit and move. And and some people can live like that. I'm not one of those people, but um, it takes a toll. It takes a toll on the family. It can take a toll on the kids. And I have the same thing happen to people that tell me, like my kid used to be a straight A student or be athletic and this and that. Now they won't come out of their room. Like they're not engaging anymore. And I'm going, okay, so let's look at what has changed. And it's just interesting, kids today spend a lot more time inside. And so what are they exposed to? Our
So
body,
I'm glad.
yeah,
Sorry,
go
go
ahead.
ahead, Jen. I was just going to say I'm glad you shared that story because I want people to know that story is a lot more common than most would probably think. These are calls we get on a daily basis, and Al, the owner of our company, we've spent years taking these calls, and he's finally learned to bring the spouses together on our upfront consult calls to know what to expect, what the possibilities could be, and that their spouse isn't crazy. I mean, there's a reason why you're seeing this personality change or the way people act, why it's different when you're exposed to mold, and it messes with your brain and your entire immune system. And just taking time to educate people and get them on the same page makes a world of difference, because we went into a lot of very, very tense situations when we're walking in, and they're not on the same page. One person thinks the house is a problem, the other one doesn't, so everything we find or try to tell them about is completely dismissed, and it's like this endless cycle of resentment with each other. So
Yeah, and then
it's made a world of a difference for us.
how can it not affect your relationships? I know when I don't feel good, I am not the same person.
Yeah.
Just despite trying to be kind and patient, when you don't feel good and you feel irritable, how can that not have an effect and domino effect, not in just to your relationships with your spouse, but your children?
Mhm.
And then you're just you're questioning your own self, like, am I, and if you're living in a fear state, obviously the pathogens, the environmental exposures are one thing, but being full of adrenaline all day long, and upregulating your nervous system because you're in fight or flight because you're
Horrible.
scared for your life, also makes you feel like crap. So for sure, I mean, I think a lot of people that see this are going to connect with what you said, because I think that's, like Sean said, much more common than people think.
Well, I think it's hard, and I think our kids are directly affected by. Um, I'll be in a meeting about a totally different subject, and someone will start talking about, oh, that they can't sleep at night and they can't do this and they can't do that, and my first thing out of my mouth is, "Where's your Wi-Fi modem?" I mean, it used to be one of those things that I was like cautious. I would be so cautious about how I'd even bring it up, but I was like, "Your Wi-Fi modems in your room? Get it out. If you have kids near Wi-Fi, turn it off at night. You just cell phones go in a basket." I mean, I'm talking, you know, you have to take measures, because if you've already got mold and autoimmune issues, then you are on heightened alert. You're constantly in a state of fight or flight, because that's what happens to your immune system, and so everything is affected, and everything is inflamed. Your central nervous system just like going haywire. So anything that anybody else could walk in and feel, that they don't feel it and you feel it, or vice versa. So it is quite interesting. My kids now are 32, 30, and 28, and all of them are very aware of walking into a place that maybe has a lot of EMF fields. And
Hmm.
I have a son. My oldest is an actor. He's on set all the time. So all the stuff that he's being hit with. And my daughter, my oldest son is an actor. My youngest daughter is a songwriter. And so she's in a production studio all the time, all over the place, and they know grounding techniques. They understand the importance of getting out and getting away and grounding yourself, and putting your feet in the sand and getting out of being bombarded all the time. And, those were things that were kind of voodoo subjects for a while, but they would all of a sudden start calling me and going, "Hey, mom, you know what? But do you mind talking to this person?" And it would be a fellow actor or the somebody who's been, a well-known songwriter, and all of a sudden they're dealing with issues they've never had before. And people are afraid to say, hey, what has changed in your environment? Is your home office or your studio, could it possibly have something going on in it, in addition to all the other electrical elements that your body's being bombarded by? But that's their industry. That's what they're kind of, they're having to deal with, but they don't understand why they've got these migraines, or why all of a sudden they, get their brain goes into cloud mode, because of the fact that it only can handle so much, you know? And so it's just such an important part of everyday life, of being grounded and detoxing yourself. One of the mold remediation companies I have talked to, and I said, what do you do every day? What do you do every day when you're having to walk into these places that have mold? He's like, man, I said infrared sauna. Sometimes I do the hot cold plunge, and so everybody has to find their way to keep themselves safe.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, and how to just detox and reset the body. A few episodes ago, I think it was Mary and Adam used the term shiny object syndrome. You see something that works for somebody else, so you try it, and it may or may not work. You have to figure out what works for you to be able to reset and just keep your body in line.
Sure. Keep your body pH balanced, keep your body healthy, grounding in whatever way it can be. When we were writing, I was dealing with my editor, going through the book, and I was so fortunate, y'all. She didn't live far from me, and I would walk on her front porch and I could feel the Wi-Fi coming out of her house. And I was like, oh my God, okay, like I can't do this. So what we would do is we would sit outside of her house just far enough that she could pick up the Wi-Fi on her laptop, and we would be sitting there with a card table. My feet were bare in the dirt, and she has the ability to connect to her Wi-Fi, but we're outside, and I'm literally like kind of hugging a tree. I got my feet in the dirt, and I'm able to concentrate and talk to her, and because she would see me, she would see my brain when I would get to when I would be bombarded by the Wi-Fi for too long. She would see my brain, and it would just exit, and she'd be like, "Okay, we're going," and we could work for hours together. If we were outside, I was grounded. It didn't bother, the Wi-Fi didn't bother her, but she still could connect to it. So, I'm telling you, I have done some crazy things to make it work, but that you figure it out.
So Jennifer, was this a domino effect since your exposure to Lyme? So like initially you didn't feel well, and then what was your light bulb moment with mold? I know that you said that you were in a building, it was older, and then you had an addition and ended up having growth. Can you talk about like that path that led you to figuring out mold was one of the main culprits?
Absolutely. So, like I said, so the small addition was kind of like a little sitting room, a little guest bedroom, bathroom. And my daughter had said, "Mommy, can I play dress up?" And I was like, "Sure." Well, my dress up clothes were in the guest bedroom closet. She goes in there and she pulls back the dresses, and on that back wall is all black mold.
Wow.
Because I wasn't sleeping, and I would go sleep in the guest bedroom so I wouldn't disturb my husband. So I was sleeping next to the mold. And so I eventually found it. But like I said, my middle son had multiple sinus surgeries, so he definitely was affected by it. But yeah, I mean, it affected the family, but it least affected my husband. And I think that now he's definitely, more aware of it, but still it's, I'm sensitive to things that he's not sensitive to. And, we have to figure it out. We find our balance, and he gets me. He understands why I'm in the water as much as I possibly can, because that's my safe haven, being in salt water. That's where my happy ground is. And, he can, he goes all day, but it's interesting because now he'll leave his office because he'll get out and get grounded and go back in. And he's super high energy. And I just get to the point that I get jittery. So, when you find your ground, I mean, I'm at coming up to 37 years of marriage. That's a long time.
Congratulations.
Mhm.
Thank you. And you figure, and you know what? You have to okay, I don't understand why you're feeling this, but I'm trying to figure it out. Like, I'm trying to understand where you're coming from. And that's where you have to be. You've got to be that dedicated to saying, I don't get it. And sometimes I think you act that shit crazy, but I figure there's got to be a reason, right? So I do a ton of juicing. I do, I have a whole, kind of a litany of things that I do to make sure that I stay healthy and grounded, um, and, and stay clear of mold. And that's not always easy. As you said, um, you're, when you're traveling, Sean, and you go check in, and all of a sudden you are like, "Oh, wait a minute," and you realize it, and you have to be brave and stand up for yourself and go, "That room's got mold in it, and I can't."
Mhm. Well, especially for us, we're in it every day. I mean, we do our best to protect ourselves. At minimum, long sleeves, long pants, respirator, hat.
Yeah.
There's plenty of instances where we're actually wearing Tyvek just for the inspection part of things, because sometimes you can walk in and you just feel it. And you can just tell, I need to protect myself here, or I may feel it later
on your skin.
Yeah, it's weird. It's
Yeah.
almost like something's crawling on you.
Yes.
And just to piggyback off of how your husband and you kind of feel each other out and let each other do what you need to do to decompress or get your body back in balance. My wife has learned what I need to do when I've had long days out in the field and this stuff, or just the emotional toll dealing with the type of clients that we deal with who just need such significant help. So, she knows what my outlets are, going to the driving range to hit some golf balls and decompress, sweat a little bit, or going to the gym or sauna to sweat out what I've been in all day.
Yeah. Here's what I find often, especially in partnerships, relational partnerships, that, if you've been with somebody for 20 years and you've been relatively happy, you think you can just check out of that because all of a sudden something goes sour and you're going to go find greener pastures? Highly unlikely. You may, and you may not. I'm not judging. I'm just saying that I knew in my case, okay, I know this is not fun for him and I am so deathly sick, but I'm going to figure it out. And I'm not going to have somebody else, as I said, raise my children.
Right.
Or be the grandmothers to my future grandchildren. I am going to figure this out because there's a lot for me to live for. So people call me now and say, "Hey, can you talk to these other people, or can you come speak to this group?" And it always depends. And, fortunately, I've got an amazing team who really helps me out and kind of can protect me on certain things because, if the energy is not the right energy, then sometimes you have to bow out. Sure. And it's okay to say thanks, but no thanks. And and I feel that, it's crazy the things that I do feel and don't. I now have the ability to turn and say, "You know what? Thanks so much, but I really cannot do this today." And I have the ability to turn and walk away. I didn't have that for a long time. And you learn, you grow. As you said, you know what it takes. Your partner knows what it takes for you to be able to get grounded and come back in fresh and renewed. And the one of the keys to getting through all of this is loving someone through it. Because when you start going through it and you feel so lonely, that is when the downhill turn can really become evil. You know, it is a very lonely road, having autoimmune issues, and I get that. I also understand raising your energy in your own vibration. So there's certain things that can't get to you, and there's certain things that you know how to walk away from.
Yeah. My sister said tough people often suffer in silence. And you said you had a hard time writing this book and coming out talking about your story. Um, but I think people need to hear it, and that's one of the reasons me and Sean started this podcast. It was like there's so much fear mongering and misinformation, but there's not really a good resource for people to come and talk about their experiences and us to talk about ours.
For
Because
sure.
similar to what Sean said, it takes a toll on us too. Not just environmentally, but mentally. It's tough to see people suffer.
It is.
If you're in this industry and you're empathetic at all, you're probably good at your job first and foremost because you care, and
Yeah.
secondly, you take on a lot of that. And I know I do. My wife often like, you're not going to answer your phone past giving me deadlines, but I'm like, but
Yeah.
calling me, what if and so
Yeah.
it's a balancing act, but I wouldn't have been in this industry for very long if it didn't matter, I didn't care. And
Yeah. But you guys are saving lives. I mean, what you do saves lives. And it was people like you that helped me save my life and save my family's life. So it is definitely a situation that you have to be a self advocate, and then you have to be an advocate for other people. And you guys are doing it every day. So thank you. Thank you for what you do. And thank you for doing this podcast. Thank you for what you do on a daily basis and go out there, because I know what y'all do is not easy, because I've witnessed it and I've had to deal with it. And I'm trying to save lives too. You guys actually can go in and do the work and do it.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to help people figure out why they're suffering from whatever they're suffering from,
Yeah.
and give them hope to search, to know it's worth the fight. It's worth saying, I know this is a pain, but you got to start juicing. You got to get your feet in the stand. You got to get fresh air. And like I said, I dedicated this book to my mom, my dad, and my sister, all of whom I lost. But um, I didn't understand the severity of mold and what was happening to my mom as I watched her slowly, go into this demise. I didn't understand what was going on in the attic of a house that I grew up in that I loved. My mother died at 80. My father lived till he's 91. You know what I mean? Same house. So it is, it's what we're exposed to, and that we're all different
We're all different.
people. We're all different beings. We're made of different atoms. We have different neurons. But you have to come together and understand, okay, you're right. And what your body needs and what my body needs may be two different things. But I will tell you that if you can come together with those differences and respect what the other person is going through, it will be a long standing, strong relationship by getting through it together. And the outreach of it is beyond imaginable.
I used to kind of chuckle under my breath when people would thank us for saving their lives or saving their marriage, whatnot, as you just thanked us, Jennifer. But once we started going to these medical conferences, and next week we're going to MAPS, which is the Medical Association for Pediatric and Special Needs. And we've been to ILADs, and people come over and they just thank us and thank us and thank us, because they felt like they were dying. And then until I saw it in my own personal family, the stress that it put on my family between their marriage, their health, and so forth, I really didn't take that seriously. I have to admit, I didn't take it seriously until it hit really close to home.
Yeah. I speak at conferences and whatnot. And so I never know where I'm going to kind of show up, but, thank God for Brittany for that. Cause she always is kind of helping me get online, get the thing working. Anyway, so I've had that happen where I've had someone stop me and go, "Are you Jennifer Brower?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And they're like, "Oh my God, you saved my life." For me, there is nothing more humbling than hearing those words come out of someone's mouth. And I will tell you that when it has been said to me, the tears just start rolling down my face, because it's like everything that I went through and all that it took for me to write that book, it's helped someone. It maybe saved someone, and the people that come and thank me and talk to me and share, their fears or things that are going on in their lives, and I can sit there and relate to them and say, "Hey, I get it. You're not crazy. You're not crazy. And you're going to get through this. You got to hold tight and have faith. And you're going to have the ability to fight through whatever it is that you're dealing with, because you're searching. You're not just crumbling."
Mm-hmm. And you're not alone. There's plenty of people out there to help and that can empathize with you.
Yeah, it's empowering to especially when you figure it out, when you do have that light bulb moment, because I think a lot of people are told they are crazy. You're this invisible, monster that's, wrecking your life and wrecking your health and making you feel like crap. And, I Sean, and we've talked about it before, Sean will tell you many times, man, people are they break down in front of us on many occasions, just because it's like, by the time I'm in there, we know about it, and I'm there to cut the cancer out in a lot of ways,
Yeah.
It's just so emotional, and stressful on top of that. They're being displaced in most cases, and houses being torn apart, and
Yep.
financial burdens. It's all a lot, and it takes time. That's why, once the reconstruction phase happens, and then people are moving back into their home, and reacclimating to their environment and buying new furniture in a lot of cases, mattresses.
Yeah.
You need a vacation from yourself after that. Like, it's going to take some time to recover.
Yeah, it's the absolute truth. It is, but the thing is that we have to give hope.
Yeah.
We have to give people the love and understanding that we get it. We understand that what they're going through, because we've all lived it.
Yep.
You guys are living it day in, day out. And, I just thank you so much for having me on your podcast. It really means the world to me, and I appreciate it. And I look forward to, probably lifelong friendships, because we're all doing the work.
Yeah.
That needs to be done to save people. And I just so appreciate what you do, and am grateful, y'all. Thank you. And
thank you.
Yeah, one last word of advice for listeners, just based off of our prior conversation right there, our thoughts anyways. What we just talked about is a lot of trauma that happens over quite a long period of time. And a lot of people, they want to feel better, they want to heal right away, but all that trauma takes such a toll on the body. I truly think that's why it takes so long for people to heal, is because of the trauma that comes with mold exposure and mold illness and ripping your house apart. So be patient with yourself. Be patient with yourself. There's plenty of ways where you can listen to your body and figure out ways to heal, but you have to be patient because it still takes a while to heal from all this.
Yeah, I often liken it to like when people retire and their body and their brain don't know the difference between yesterday and today. And just because you're no longer in that stressful environment doesn't mean your body's not going to respond like that way for some time until you
Yes.
are able to figure out how to let go and let your body relax and get back to a normal level of stress. And not stop with the mental, wheel that you put yourself on. That those things are hard to do, and often this is just the first piece of the puzzle, especially for those who are fearful of it.
Yes.
They have to then do the remainder of the work it takes to get off of that hamster wheel of fear too. So all those things are tough, and again, I commend you for being brave enough to tell your story, because it matters. It does. It helps people out there. Jennifer, where can people find you, or where can they find your book? Can you tell us like the website, or where
Yep.
all those things?
Website jennifercbrower.com. This is
Spell your last name for me real quick.
BROWER.
Okay.
Here is what the book looks like.
Awesome. We'll put the link in the bio too.
Yeah. That's great. I'll tell you, I'll just say, I don't know if you see it. It has all sorts of tests. It's got beautiful pictures of parasites, and it's got, all sorts of information, I have a number of people who have written and collaborated with me that were my healthcare team. Like I said, please tell the story of how you dealt with me and what you did to help me. And in the book, there is a ton of science. There's a ton of stories. I've got PET scans. I've got all sorts of information. There are scan me codes in the book, so you can scan it, and it'll take you to the website, and it'll give you the information in color and detail. Because when I wanted all these tests and everything in color so people could really read them and understand them, and they're like, "Oh my God, well, okay, well, your book's going to cost X amount." I'm like,
Right.
no, that can't happen. People won't buy it. They won't. It's going to be too expensive, and I don't want it. This is not a moneymaker. Trust me, not a moneymaker. But yeah. So my team came up with that whole concept of being able to take so you can see the test and you can scan it. Then it takes you to the website. You can read everything. You can read all about the test, why it's important, what you do with the information. And it takes you the next step further. So again, jennifercbrower.com. You can go on there. You can connect with us. You can join our community, Silent Killers Project, Silent Killers Community. We're trying to help as many people as we can and just support people through this.
That's awesome.
There's a lot going on out there. And, I just am grateful to you guys. Thank you again. And, keep up the good work.
We're real happy you joined us today. I don't think we even scratched the surface probably everything in your book, but for those listening, go buy it, go read it, and hopefully, we'll get another chance to visit in the future.
Y'all, that would be great. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it, and I appreciate everything you do.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thanks again.
The content in this podcast should not be taken as medical advice. While our goal is to educate, the hosts are not medical professionals, and the opinions expressed are their own. For any health concerns or questions about mold exposure and its effects, please seek the advice of a qualified healthcare provider.